John, I understand you've been on this course before, and we're really lucky in our class, I think, to have somebody who took the course over 20 years ago has actually been able to use it. What was it brought you back here?
Okay. First of all, I recognized that although I'd internalized a lot of the concepts that I had learned then, there were several things that I wasn't using well, and risk management was primary among them. And I've almost never been involved in negotiating to any great extent. I do a lot of internal negotiation in the sense of one-on-one or with individuals. I do a fair amount of recruiting, which you wouldn't maybe classify as negotiating, but there certainly is risk that I am taking that I need to be able to manage better in this whole framework. So one of the primary things I came back for was risk management. Secondarily, for the strategy grid, because although I had used it a little bit and played with it, I recognized that in quite a number of my projects I could have gone about them in a more structured way if I had looked at the strategy. I mean, I think I've always used the wait and see approach versus, say, an active or a proactive approach, and looked at that dimension. But what I hadn't really dealt with is what's the vertical dimension on that strategy grid, and I wanted to learn to use that.
Well, I think it really is impressive. Recognize the way you can develop these skills and the kind of opportunities that this sort of course offers, really, at all stages through your career. I mean, there's always more, isn't there?
There's always more. One of the things that I have done, and I think the other engineer and I tried to bring a good project management methodology into our company a few years ago. I'm not talking about EPCM projects, I'm talking about R&D projects. Mm-hmm. And in the R&D project area, there are a lot of things that are fuzzy that you're dealing with, and you can't just take engineering project management and apply it. And so one of the reasons I'm back here is I've had a try at 2 other systems. I'm recognizing this is one of the best systems, and I'm saying, should I send some of my senior engineers back on this course over the next couple of years and bring this methodology back more strongly into our team? Because one of the things that is, we're not a huge company, but with 1,400 people on the site that I work in, we still have a number of groups who are unclear about their mission. I know Alain's background on mission. I really have an idea now what they're starting to see as their vision, but can my team, I have 64 engineers and technicians that I'm directly responsible for, can we clarify our mission so that we can avoid being event-driven, as Alain loves to say, and be mission-driven on everything that we do in that team?
And I think talking to some other people in the group who are from the same work environment, it really would be nice to have people in your own work environment that have also been on the course, and that you can talk about these ideas with, and
Well, they've heard me talk extensively, and I coach them all the time on the F7 model as an example.
It would be nice for them to get it from him too.
It certainly would be, and they know about surprise events, and they know about building a critical mass. But I'm afraid I've forgotten ever to tell them about the dominant coalition and to warn them of several of the traps, or the things that we pay less attention to that we really ought to pay attention to. So yes, them hearing it directly from in the course would be powerful if we could then combine.
I can see I would probably be using a lot of these ideas in more people management kind of activities, which is sort of interesting, and I can't wait to kind of go back and think about putting it in that framework, because here I've just been soaking it all up. So.
Well, the other thing that I see is that our project or our riders are quite different than the kind of riders that I'm hearing about in the course, but I can still recognize them. In our case, it tends to be what we refer to as the business side. The people who are the accountants and the business managers are the riders, and the engineers are always championing things. Mm-hmm. And how to orchestrate bringing those 2 sides together.
I'm sure there's some new ideas that you've got out of the course this time. Can you discuss some of those?
Well, I found it very interesting because there were 2 things I've heard in the course that I was doing almost by accident, shall we say, because they weren't part of the original course, or I've learned to do them on the job, and now I'm learning formally. They are part of the new system. Mm-hmm. And 2 of those, for example, in the original course, we talked a lot about project champions and project riders, and did not talk about what we now refer to as the orchestrator or conductor. But I was naturally taking that role in the company, because that seemed the best fit as the manager, and I was frequently orchestrating those kinds of things. The other one that I found that I was naturally doing, and I have a number of examples of this, is where I've hitchhiked on surprise events that were only somewhat related to what I was using. So I have managed to use those surprise events to further what I thought were, and I've been able to convince others were, to the benefit of the company, but hitchhiking on those surprise events. So those two concepts, and then of course I've talked about the strategy grid, and that was important. And now the value incubation, I think, is a stronger concept than it was then, and can be used much more powerfully than it was then.
So obviously Alain has been observing how these things function in the workplace, and he's added in the things that you found also that you were adding too. So
I regret a little bit that I didn't keep in more contact over the years.
Right.
But I was just going to say there were a number of other projects I applied this to, and just very quickly, there was a large group put together a year and a half ago to look at the future of our company in that location, and we called it P3, and it was to improve productivity and profitability. And in that team, I used a number of these concepts, just bringing them along in terms of their thinking. I'm applying it today to I talked about mercury disposal. Well, today our big challenge is arsenic disposal. So that's a current project, will be ongoing for 2 or 3 more years, and I am applying all of these concepts in arsenic disposal. Near the mid-90s, when I talked about the surprise event of the Kivset furnace, or the lead furnace that failed, we had to make up that big loss of money, expand our zinc production. And so we had a zinc capacity expansion project to which I applied a number of these concepts. We went up by about 20% capacity, and that had a lot of stakeholders in it right across the property, and found it very useful there.
I don't know, John has made this grid which gives the projects that he's been doing that he was just able to quickly itemize. I'm sure there are a lot more than that. And then he's itemized the concepts from the project management course and the pre-project management incubation period, where he has used those in the various projects. I think that's really quite impressive.
I quit a company in the 80s and rejoined Cominco because I got sold to Johnson Matthey, and I actually used a number of these concepts on regaining the job that I wanted back with the original company.
Very good.
But the other thing you were too nice to point out on here is I also marked myself down where I've used some of the tools poorly. The little negative signs are where I use the tool poorly, and I've also marked where I intend to use some other ones much more extensively in the future, and I could have used in previous projects.
So a self-evaluation tool as well as
just quickly done last night, knowing
else.
that you wanted to talk about this subject.
I'm really impressed. Well, I never would have thought that you would notice the things you didn't use properly, so that's fantastic.
Well, that was why I came to the course this time around.
Very good.
Because I knew I wasn't using some of them as well as they could be used.
Yep.
So Dan, it's been interesting talking to you, but what do you do on the job?
What do I do? Well, I have a really interesting job.